telling me how statins don't affect your kidneys. He's telling me that on video. I lost all respect for that dude. So, anyways, because he's like, it's a different conversation talking about the damages. I'm like, we're talking statins, bro. We're talking about the whole body. Come on. So
Alzheimer's, dementia, 400%
everything
increased
he didn't
risk.
eat. I always threw in the vegetables out of guilt. You gotta have your spinach, gotta have your broccoli. I'm like, oh my god, well, put some cheese on it or something, right? And I ended up eating animal based all the time, anyways, as keto for the most part. And I was like, well, I'm gonna stick to it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I am super excited to be chatting to Eric Reynolds from Keto 50, as you probably know him on Instagram, especially the carnivore crowd. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for accepting my invite. I am very pumped to hear your story and what brought you to this world, and what benefits have you seen from changing your lifestyle?
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, I guess quick bio. I'm a retired police officer from Florida. I grew up in Miami, so I was a Miami kid my whole life, and then went off to Florida State, got my degree, and then became a police officer a few years later, and did that for about 20 years, and had all the typical trials and tribulations as a cop: weight gain, trauma, stress, shift work, and all that type of stuff, bad eating habits that carried over from my youth. And I found myself about 250 pounds with heart disease and pretty much metabolically sick. And then I discovered keto, and there were guys I was playing basketball with, and ended up losing about 50 pounds, went carnivore, lost another 25, retired from police work, sold our house, got an RV, pulled our kids out of school, homeschooled, traveled the country. And now we started a nonprofit called Cops and Campers, where we bring that metabolic health to the first responder community. So that's pretty much where we're at right now.
I love that. I had no idea you were from Miami. Where in Miami?
I went to Miami Palmetto. I was down there in South Miami area, down there
Nice.
near the falls and, so.
Yeah, yeah. I moved from Lebanon to Miami in 2012. The first year
Okay.
I rented myself well, I had a roommate. I only lasted with her for like 4 months. The first thing she ever told me that, oh wow, I thought you would be darker. Like she's like, oh Lebanon, I must be
Yeah.
like brown or like a darker skin tone. And anyway, and then her dad comes over. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're rednecks. Did you know what that means?" And I kind of knew. I was like, not really. I just wanted to be respectful because I know like the negative connotation with that. So anyway, I lasted with her 1 semester, and then I read the contract really well to find any loophole so I could get away from the lease. And I think that the landlord kind of had a crush on me. So so I went and I told him that we're having problems, whatever. He's like, yeah, that's fine. So I was able to get myself a different apartment by myself. So that first year, it was in South Miami, like because I went to the University of Miami, right? So
Yeah.
that first year lived right there in South Miami, and then I met my hubby, soon to be hubby, and he was in Kendall. So then we moved in right away. It happened really fast. I mean, he proposed, like, got me the ring 4 months after our first date, and
Wow.
yeah, and and then it was in Kendall pretty much for like a whole decade, and then after the pandemic, Ocala, because we wanted to buy a house, and like buying a
Yeah.
house in Miami, you get that money and you get so much better things anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife is Turkish, so I don't know. It must be the eyes that you guys have, because I fell in love with my wife right away. I was definitely the one that said I loved you first. I would have proposed to her, but then there was this, her family was, Muslim and I wasn't, so we had to go through this whole little. That's a whole nother off the air story. But
Interesting.
yeah, so it was, I ended up in like my big fat Greek wedding, but she was the Turkish version. So I come in and I'm like, who are all
Mm.
these people? And but yeah,
Wow.
she locked me down pretty fast. And so I know what that means. I know exactly how he felt, man, because I was there, and
Wow.
I knew that she was it, and that was it. I was done. I was
Yeah,
turned in my player card and my gun belt, and I was done.
I love it. Yeah, I think when like for me, always in relationships, it was always like just the feeling. Like it was never, I feel like you should never use your brain when it comes to relationships. It's
Right.
just like, this is what I wanted. I think it's more of an energy thing, a vibe you pick up. Because there are lots of people like on paper, they're perfect, but then I don't know, there's just something. There's something off, and you can't put your finger on it.
And yeah, and the oddballs are the happiest people around sometimes, and you're like,
Hmm.
well, they didn't seem like a match, but they work. My wife and I are like that a lot. We're similar in a lot of ways, especially nutrition,
Uh-huh.
raising our kids, some of the things we want out of quality of life. But she's more into like, she's from Brooklyn, New York, so she's more into Broadway shows. Oh my God, I can't imagine that. But I've done that. We did the Wicked thing, and wickedly
Nice.
terrible. But anyways,
Oh,
okay.
really? Wasn't
No,
good?
no,
Oh,
it's a great show, but it's not my
yeah.
vibe, right?
Right.
So.
Right, right,
But
right.
you adapt, and I think it's good to have a little bit of the opposite flow in there to keep things interesting.
Totally. Yeah, we don't, yeah, you don't have to do everything in common. Like my husband will, he's obsessed with horror movies. I
I
hate
love horror
horror
movies.
movies with a passion. It's like, it's like we all have our things, and I think that makes it work better as opposed to sometimes like everything together all the time is also too much, Like
Right.
you gotta maintain whatever it is that you like your individuality. But as you can see, we can open up so many different topics here.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about your transformation and when it comes to your health, because that must have been something major that you decided to make a thing out of it, the whole, you said, what's it called? Campers,
Cops and campers.
cops and campers. Okay.
Yeah, like
So,
cops camping pretty much is what it is. Yeah, that happened in 2021. We were in New York and had a little incident where a campground wanted me to take down my police flag, and it turned into a little thing it went viral. And I got suspended from a camping group because I lost my cool. That's where you can see some of the trauma come in. And all these different campgrounds invited my family and us to their campgrounds, and they kind of treated us like MVPs. We were meeting all kinds of different people, and it was really cool. It was meeting a lot of different cops that were camping, and it kind of turned into a movement at that point. So we took it and ran with it.
mm-hmm.
And my story with the keto carnivore world when I was, I think in 2018 is when I discovered it. And I didn't know anything about it. I thought it was a horrible like CrossFit training. I've always told people like keto, what is that? Because it sounds martial artsy, right? It sounds like I got to do some karate chopping or rolling around, on the UFC fighting or something.
Aikido, that's hilarious. That's
So,
funny.
and that's just my own ignorance. I didn't really look into ketogenics or anything like that. So I finally did and was like, well, I've tried everything else. The doctors try to get me on statins for the high LDL as they're always chasing.
Mhm.
And I started losing weight pretty fast. And, you always lose weight at first, but what I was seeing was I was also paying attention. I got the app, started looking at scanning everything. I started off with a goal of, I think it was just 2 pounds a week, and I was 250 pounds. So at 6 foot tall, so for that size, that wasn't a horrible rate for me, So it taught me a lot about meal prepping, meal planning, looking at what I'm eating, and then how to count the carbs because I never counted, and I didn't know how many carbs I was putting away until I looked at, and started scanning stuff and looking at it, and it blew my mind.
Mm.
And then as you're seeing the success, you're gaining knowledge, and then you're discovering everybody from like Dr. Barry to all these different people. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't know this. I'm not the only freak that's thinking this is the best way to live, right? And then a couple of Facebook groups you meet up with, and then you just start, man, what a crowd, right, to be a part of, and the energy that people have, and the support, and the stories that you hear that are worse than yours, like tons. You're depressed about, I'm 50 pounds overweight, and you see these people that are 500 pounds overweight, and it's very inspiring, and it just, it grows, and then that becomes a new passion, and I started helping cops and in my own department, they nicknamed me Keto 50. It just kind of, Hawaii 50 and keto, they're like, hey, you want to lose 20 pounds, go see Reynolds and, in evidence. And, I would help them get off like Dr. Pepper to diet Dr. Pepper and then off the Dr. Pepper to, the sparkling water and try to just educate them. I wasn't going to change them. I mean, these are guys that carry a gun for a living, make life and death decisions. I'm going to come along saying the Coca-Cola is bad for you. So you got to have a whole nother approach, you know. And alcohol is brought up. I've actually gave it up like 600 days ago, but it was just, you got to be careful when you're navigating with these tough guys about what they're eating and
Mm.
but it grew, and a lot of guys were losing weight and when we decided to retire in 2019 on my 50th birthday, I retired. I was about 200 pounds. I was feeling pretty good, and then I just got done reading, I think it was Paul Saladino's book, The Carnivore Code. And I was like blown away on this whole primitive. way of thinking of eating. And just, I always felt like that was more my style. I always threw in the vegetables out of guilt. You gotta have your spinach, gotta have your broccoli. I'm like, oh my God, well, put some cheese on it or something, right? And I ended up eating animal based all the time anyways as keto for the most part. And I was like, well, I'm going to stick to it. I did the organs. Oh my God, I got videos of me trying like kidneys and
Mm,
stuff that just I didn't have to go become a hard charger. I kept learning about it and realizing I didn't need to do all of that if I was, supplementing my diet with other things. And that's just kind of how it led till the flag incident in New York.
mm,
Along the campgrounds I'd go to, a lot of retired people, a lot of elderly people, a lot of military veterans, and they're all metabolically sick. They're all on medications of some sort. They're all on something, and hey, what's a flag? You're too young to be a cop, or be a retired cop or something like that, and then you start talking, I tell them about my transformation, and next thing you know, I got a client or I got at least somebody that's going to follow up on some of the stuff I'm telling them,
mhm,
and it's up to them. They're going to have to carry the torch, because they're going
mhm.
to be ones driving around by themselves looking at McDonald's deciding, hmm, and then I'm going to be in their head, hey, remember I told you that's toxic. Just go buy the real stuff, and that's pretty much how it started.
So the flag incident, does everybody know what it is? Because I don't really,
Well, it's kind of gets taken out of context because it became very politicized, and the thin blue line goes back actually to the red line, the thin red line, which was the Scots and the British were fighting the Russians, and a small battalion of Scottish soldiers helped the British defeat these Russians. So it was known as the thin red line because you got these Scots with all their red hair, right? And then
okay.
it got adopted within like armies and royalty, and then around 1920s there's some police departments that tried to introduce the thin blue line, and that's the line between order and chaos. And
Mm,
we're in between. And it's always, flowing because sometimes society's laws change. They want a little bit more of this, they want less of this. So it's always changing. So that's how I was brought up. My mom being a retired, sergeant in homicide in Miami for 30 years, my stepdad. So that's kind of how I grew up. So, the flag was now looked at as an opposition to BLM, and it was never that the way I was
mm,
taught, the way I was brought up, and then it became just this divisive topic. But I put it up to break the ice for a lot of people didn't know about the flag like yourself. You asked, hey, I started telling people, it
mm.
represents all the cops that couldn't make it to retirement, and it's
Oh,
also a represent a brotherhood that and my brotherhood of cops, we're so diverse. I mean, we have Asians, we got black guys, we got women, we're more diverse than, where do you think cops come from? It's not a cop factory.
right.
We come from society. The same guy that's bagging your groceries or managing somewhere or running a car dealership. That's where we come from. So it was always interesting to me when they made it so divisive, and yeah, you can get into political stuff of what laws we're enforcing, whether that should be enforceable, but that's why we got a right to vote. We get
Mm-hmm.
together and we vote for those laws, and that's why I took the oath to defend that. So when a guy comes up to you and doesn't introduce himself to you and just kind of tells you like he's a boss to take down your flag, without really a lot of explanation, it could,
Right.
you can lose your cool. And I lost my cool. And I happened to film it because for once I was able to film something instead of
Right.
me being filmed. And I lost my cool. Not proud of it, but it actually turned into a very positive moment, because it helped me realize some of my own issues that I got with trauma and stuff like that. I was
Yeah.
shot. I got shot in 2012 by a bank robber after a car chase. He shot me through the foot and through my leg. And whew, all right. So sometimes I got to take a deep breath because we go down these roads and
Mm.
whew.
Oh, I'm
So
so sorry.
no, I'm good. I'm good. I know I caught you off guard. So
Yeah.
I got
I, mhm.
so being shot in the line of duty and then killing a guy and then some of the stuff you got to go through afterwards, with
Mhm.
family and your own psyche, over time. That's why keto and all that way was so helpful because it got my brain and firing on ketones and, the depression went away. And so, yeah, losing my cool on that video over a flag turned into cops and campers. There were some rallies for me. News came out like there was a young lady named Blaze Gomez up in New York that did a behind the scenes report on it, and she snuck in plain clothes and filmed the campground. And it was really awesome. And that just ignited a couple more articles about the controversy of the thin blue line and all that stuff. And that summer, they're flipping police cars and burning them. So I'm like, what is going on in this world? I just retired. I just wanted to camp. I was just camping, and it turned into this huge monster. But then, I got a lot of support, and along the way, I'm able to introduce this way of, because I don't look like I did when I was a cop. I was bald headed, 225 pounds for most of my career, and I put on the extra weight after my shooting and, lack of
Mm-hmm.
movement, and developed
Mm-hmm.
the heart disease. They're telling me, we can get into the CAC score thing when you're ready, but that was one of the biggest things that changed my life and helped me retire. And that became a catalyst,
Mm-hmm.
because when I did keto, my primary was like, yeah, you're losing weight, but your LDL's so high, we're still worried about your heart and all this stuff. Let's send you for a coronary calcium score. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what's that? And go take
Mm-hmm.
the test, thinking I'm good. And he calls me up. I remember I was standing in the living room of the house we were going to sell. And he's like, Eric, I got to get you in a cardiologist. This came back super high. It's 1500. And at the time, the max, 0 to 400 is the range that they use. And I come in at 1500. And I'm like, that's not good, huh? And he's like, no. So I go into the cardiologist and he's like, you got heart disease, man. What are we going to do about you? I go, well, I'm asymptomatic. Well, maybe we should do a stress test and maybe we should do all these. He's already, you might need stents. We got to get you on a cholesterol. I mean, it was this full on, full court press of scare tactics, right?
Yeah.
And man, Dr. Ken Berry's video, even though I went in with the cardiologist, pretty knowledgeable, I was still like intimidated. I even recorded it. I still have a memo recording that guy don't know I got when him telling me how statins don't affect your kidneys. He's telling me that on video. I lost all respect for that dude. So, anyways, because he's like, it's a different conversation talking about the damages. I'm like, we're talking statins, bro. We're talking about the whole body. Come on. So,
Alzheimer's, dementia, 400%
everything,
increased
he didn't
risk.
even,
I hope you're enjoying this podcast. Remember that I will send you a free copy of my guide, the 30-day carnivore diet challenge guide, when you sign up to my newsletter at drzaldivar.com/newsletter. Also, if you are looking for more one-on-one personalized support, check out my coaching packages at drzaldivar.com/coaching. Now back to the podcast.
and his whole office was full of dead guys. They were just waiting for their time to be punched. They were all gray, just
Oh,
slumped over. It looked like a death factory, man. And I've seen that in South Florida, being a cop with all the, we have a lot of retirement areas, and we do get called to a lot of death scenes because people die of natural causes or medical causes. And I used to see these people's medicine cabinets, and you just see nothing but pills everywhere. Everywhere's pills. Kitchen cabinet, the fridge. I'm like, is this all this guy was eating was pills? Is he eating? And then you see the food services stuff in the freezers and the fridge. It's all just crap. And I didn't catch
toxic.
on then. Yeah, looking back, now it was hiding in plain sight right in front of me. So yeah, and once the cholesterol came back and I watched Dr. Barry's video about, did your cholesterol go up on keto? I'm like, yes. How many times have you seen those? And you're just like agreeing with it. So yeah, and it made me feel a lot more confident, and I walked away from regular medicine and started going to more of the keto carnivore events and started like working on helping more people individually, and then I met Doug Reynolds and he helped me go to sports nutrition school through Jeff Cotterman out there in Society of Metabolic Health, but it's also part of the National Association of Sports Nutrition that's out there in San Diego. So
Mm,
all during COVID, I went to school online, learning about amino acids, and I still can't pronounce half the stuff I was learning, because I was a cop on road patrol for 20 years, writing dumb reports for dumb juries. That's how they teach you. You know,
some reports.
Spot ran into the bank and smacked Jane. Jack got mad. Real simple stuff. And now I'm asking my wife, I'm like, how do I say that so I don't embarrass myself talking in public?
That is you are hilarious. I feel like you could make an amazing stand-up comic. Like the
Uh,
way that you tell stories, you have a knack for really like being funny.
it's my therapy, I guess. I have to get it out in humor,
Mm,
and because a lot of it is torturous at times,
mm.
and you flattered me, and now I forgot my where I was.
We're talking about dumb reports for dumb
Oh
judges.
yeah, yeah. I was saying
Yeah.
because So the calcium score was a kind of an issue that I thought about. It was always in the back of my mind, and I read about it and I'm healing. And as long as it's calcified and there's no loose plaque, I felt pretty good. And then last year I was at Low Carb USA in Boca, and Dr. Philip Ovadia or Ovadia, however they want to say it, was there. And I'd already done his podcast once before talking about the stress of the job. And I hadn't, and I mentioned to him about my CAC score. And he's like, oh, interesting. He's like, have you had one done since? And I was like, no, I pretty much been 5 years carnivore. I wonder if it went up or if it hung around the same. He's like, let's get it done. So we went and got it done last February, a year ago, and it came back 4,100. So it tripled. So now I'm a 4,000 CAC, right? So I'm in that 99.9999%, right? But I ain't feeling anything. And now it's becoming a mind game because he's like, well, this is interesting. You're asymptomatic. The only thing I really have is some of the LDL being, my total cholesterol is 331. The LDL is 239,
Huh.
So yeah, I know my LDL's always been high,
Hmm.
you know.
Did you ever
So
do the fractionation test to see how
yes,
it,
so
okay.
we did the fractionate. Well, what ended up happening was a series of things because he was discovering a lot of his patients were a lot of it was periodontal stuff with their teeth through heavy metals. And then also a lot of mycotoxins were showing up in a lot of his patients. So he recommended I go get a full panel like blood work test, like an $800 test, right? And they test for everything. And it came back, man, I was super high in mycotoxins, heavy molds, like 10 of them. I was in the red of all these different molds and stuff. And then I was also high in heavy metals, which is it was arsenic, mercury, and aluminum. So it's like, all right, I've secured my diet, but something's still going on to cause some of this calcium buildup and some of this inflammation. Sorry, I just got a little visitor. And so it's like, okay, what is causing it? So it turns out I have at the time, I had six mercury fillings in my teeth from like 1982. It's like Civil War dentistry, right?
Like
So I've
silver fillings, like the old school ones.
old mercury, whatever they used in them, which obviously was mercury. So
Mm,
I went to a biodentist, had to put that whole gear on, and they
right.
sucked it all out and cleaned it all out. And
That's really good that you knew. They already did somebody tell you you're already well versed by that point to choose a biological dentist as opposed to a
my
regular
wife,
one?
she's the true naturopath in the whole family. She was the one that was probably because of some of the family influences, she wasn't able to go away to go to college the way she wanted. So some of the control that was going on back then, because anyway, it's a long story that we can get in another time. Anyway, so
Mhm.
she's
Oh,
the
I
true,
know. I come from
yeah, yeah,
Lebanon
you know.
and I met, yes, I know how in certain, yeah, I get
just
it.
some customs would get in the interference of her becoming a doctor, even
Mhm.
though that so she's definitely the brains in our operation, but
I'll
she
tell
was
you a quick story about that,
yeah,
like very quick. I remember when that was like a great thing that my parents, were always very like you do whatever, like we'll support. They really helped me leave Lebanon because there's really nothing there for you in Lebanon. I was finishing my master's and midway through my master's, I realized there's nothing for me here. And anyway, the when I so like probably a month before I graduated with my master's and I came to the United States, like I got the calls. I remember getting a call telling me that you are admitted to I because I applied to four different PhD programs, got accepted into all of them with financial and everything. I over applied because I wanted to guarantee that I was gonna leave. Like I wasn't gonna just
right,
apply for right. So anyway, I'm getting the call and there's this nurse who's working with me on my finishing up my research for your master's, kind of like a dissertation, but it's faster to finish, whereas a dissertation for your PhD takes years. So she also you could tell like she is stuck in this job, barely getting paid, and but she's, I guess, from a more conservative family, and so her parents wouldn't let her like do a PhD and leave. And I remember that moment like it was yesterday
yeah,
because here I am, so ecstatic. I'm gonna be in Miami, like getting the call. You Americans are calling me, telling me you're good, and last minute things, and I get that acceptance, and she's in the room and she's listening to the conversation And then, we go into it afterwards. She's like, yeah, like they would never let me leave like a woman by myself. It's like, wow. Like, thankfully, my parents very liberal, all my
Yeah.
family. Like it was never even an issue, like to tell me what to do or things like that. Like that never even crossed my mind that for some people, like there's that level of control over them. I mean, if that were me, I would still be stuck in Lebanon, probably completely depressed and maybe not even here, wouldn't want to live, you
Yeah,
know?
that fleeing away a little bit is what got my wife down to Florida, and that's how we met. So, she
Really?
just, I mean, she was up in New York and just trying to already graduate from college and came back home and the rules were back in place. And she was like, wait a minute.
Even though it
I'm,
was the United States, like,
yeah. But
yeah,
she's
that's
first generation here. Her parents
mhm.
grew up in Turkey, fleeing from Uzbekistan because Stalin was killing all the Uzbeks back then. So they have this whole, they actually, she needs to write a book because they got a tale that they tell of like, my son's actually, his middle name is named after her grandfather, how he fled the country saving so many of the family, and all these daughters were being promised to him. I mean, it's not all, rated PG, but it's, the way that it was back then. I mean, they're fleeing through Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan to get to Turkey. Like,
Wow.
Americans, we don't understand that. We never had to flee this country and end up in Iceland or something, like, or
Yeah.
somewhere, it's just wild to hear them sit around and talk, if I can get a word in, usually I can't, but I just sit back and, but it's like,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
fascinating, but
Aaron, yeah.
she was
We
so,
tend to like shout, sorry. Here I'm doing it again because see, if you don't talk, you don't have a chance, like you don't get an opening to talk. Like so you have to like
do you do
jump
this to
in
your
there.
husband? You ask him a question and before he can answer it, you've already asked him two more questions. Oh my goodness. I can't even keep up with I just wait now. I'm like, all right, there's another question coming. I'm just gonna wait for the third one. Then
There you go.
she's like, you're too slow. I'm like,
You're too slow. Oh my God. That's a good way to deal with it.
so yeah, it's funny. But yeah, she was the brains behind, you got to go to a biodentist. So we found one and did the whole thing of taking out and him filling in the fillings. And, I think I had a little poisoning afterwards because I had all this different stuff going on. My knee swelled up. I had all this like, I had like a splinter that got infected, was really pus. Like it felt like my body was discharging,
Yeah.
and we also saw a homeopathic doctor was giving me little tinctures of like, I don't know if it was ashwagandha or whatever, there's all this crazy stuff that my wife's into, all herbalist stuff and natural medicine. And, my son gets hurt and she has a little, oh, here we go. She's a medicine doctor.
Nice.
So she's really got a great craft for that. So she saved me, got me in the right direction for that. We kept trying to figure out what was causing the arsenic. She's not poisoning me because we don't eat rice and all that stuff. But I really think it was my diet growing up. I ate a lot of cereals, a lot of fast food, a lot of school lunches, a lot of the processed food we had in our house,
Mm-hmm.
was frozen, processed TV dinners, and that's all made with brown rice pretty much, and brown rice is filled with arsenic, so I think that was one of them. Aluminum could be deodorant, vaccines, the air. I mean, it's coming from every direction, and those are the three main ones, and discovered
Yeah.
I had Lyme disease. I never knew what Lyme disease was until my 7-year-old experienced it 2 years ago. And he had it really bad to where we were thinking my son was suffering some genetic, like Marfan disease or Marfan syndrome and all kinds of stuff. We're going in for testing and they're just trying to prescribe him antibiotics for something they don't even know what's, I mean, it's this typical BS that you go through. And luckily we had met somebody said get him tested for Lyme. So we got him tested for Lyme and bingo, that's what he had. So then we were able to find doctors that specialize in Lyme. And luckily his dad is in a low inflammation diet already, and that's how we eat in our house. So him being, son of Keto 50 actually helped him recover, and there's just a lot of little different things we had to do with him. He's very sensitive to sugar and his inflammation we got to watch very strictly. It's something he's gonna have to probably
Mhm.
battle his whole life and just
Probably.
monitor it. Just keep an eye on it. He can't go crazy. If he starts overcarbing it, he's not gonna be able to move. He's just gonna swell up.
I've seen reversal of Lyme, all the like the testing, the official diagnosis on strict carnivores. So that's something that you may want to explore, the stricter. But I get it, it's
He's
difficult.
so sensitive. Like if he eats chicken eggs that the chickens had soy or corn, he will. have a reaction. And I know we all do because obviously eat processed food and you're going to show a reaction from it, but he's real sensitive because he's pure. He was he was born about a month early. He was always very, sensitive to things. He had a problem latching as a baby, even though he
Mhm.
breastfed for 3 years. Both my kids breastfed for 3 years. And let me tell you, not only is it cheaper, keep mama bear home with those babies. I mean, that's what you need to do. If you want to give your kid a nice jump start in life. Oh, I never knew it. I wasn't breastfed. I didn't come from that world.
Yeah,
But as we studied along the way with her, hey, we'll breastfeed for a couple of months and we'll go from there. That's how they teach you, right? And she started reading more about it and being the Turkish descent. Her mom had 4 kids, her grandmother had 10, and it keeps going. And they all had it natural. They breastfed. I'm just going to do it. And
true.
then you understand the true connection between mom and child
Yeah,
and what's actually going on physiology with the body and the immune system and everything that's happening, and
yeah.
we learned together, about nutrition through that kid, and now he's 13, he's strong doing parkour and it's awesome. But it's funny how your kid, I always say my 2 boys saved my life because it really made me take a, obviously with some of the diagnoses that were coming and I'm already being in a stressful job. I know the number one killer of cops is heart attacks. Most of us, half of us die within 5 years of retirement, and nobody's talking about it. It's just,
Really?
yeah,
I
that's
didn't
a
know
lot of,
that.
that's a lot of families out there dealing with, dad's not around. He just did 35 years as a cop. What kind of life is that? So that's why, I tapped out at 50 years old, 20 years in roughly, and left a whole lot of money behind. But I got out of it 5 years of camping with my kids, homeschooling, teaching them how to do all kinds of things, improving my life to be with them longer and to be there for them. And, through education of nutrition and life skills and being, my kids walk up to strangers, shake their hand, and introduce themselves. I mean, they're better than I am. And I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, my name's Eric, you have to jump in there. So it's really fantastic. And kids, I never realized it. I was in my 40s when we had both of them. I did that other life before and made mistakes. And man, I'm telling you, if you haven't had kids or you do have kids, definitely appreciate those guys because
Mhm.
they're a lifesaver. At least my guys were.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I don't know though. My hubby has 2 kids. They're grown. Um, I was ranting off of like curing aging before we started recording, so I feel like I could like smell that we're so close to curing aging. So I feel like all my resources has to be just dump there, you know? Because if I can save my life, then I'll have eternity to have babies. But let's not have people click off as like she's talking crazy because I don't have
Oh,
time now to go into like hours of explaining the science and how close we are. But you know, there's a lot of doctors there that can talk about anti-aging. But I feel like for me, that's where my head's at right now.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can see, when you have such a strong purpose, such a beautiful thing in your life, and they're so full of love and a family that you want to be your best self for. So
Yeah. I never realized how busy I was. Working
Mhm.
10 hours, 5 days a week, and then do an overtime. You see cops working extra details, we call it. That's when you're standing in front of a jewelry store directing traffic. That's just extra money. And you're jumping on that usually on top of what you've already worked. So
Mhm.
that leads into us being more tired, more metabolically sick, and then you have, we lead the country in divorces. I mean, geez, we're never there.
Right.
So that's what happened. And then cops go down roads of alcohol and suicide and depression, and it's a really nasty situation. So that's one of the things I'm working on right now is a project to get us going around promoting more of this heart initiative for first responders because I don't think they know. They don't know what they're eating, the stress that they're causing themselves, and yeah, they hear, yeah, you're going to die later on, blah blah blah. They don't really understand it. They don't know the quality of
Mhm.
life they're going to have before they die those years after they retire. So we're
Mhm.
trying to get to them now, get them to fast on duty, go to breakfast afterwards, eat more bacon and eggs, less donuts and, bagels and stuff like that. Because I didn't know. I thought I was following the good advice and I kept getting bigger, kept lifting weights, kept working out, kept getting bigger, and you're going to need knee replacement. Nobody ever said, They said quit drinking. That's the only thing they ever said. Oh, you should probably quit drinking. That'll help you lose some weight.
Like
You know,
in
and they,
general, when they would recommend to all of the force, like general,
yeah, they're like quit drinking. Nobody ever said stop eating bread.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start telling them, stop eating the bread, guys. Eat more meat. But a lot of us are married to nurses. We're married to teachers. We're married to, lawyers or other professionals or something. And they're already getting advice from the system. Your cholesterol is too high, or this, you can't eat red meat all the time. You're
yeah.
crazy. So they're dealing with me going, eat red meat. And then they go back to this world of this pressure. You can't do that. Your dad died of a heart attack. It's
Hmm.
hereditary, and it's just, yeah, your bad diet's hereditary. That's a problem. And I don't think people really realize it and how toxic our food is and how poison it really is.
How true is the stereotype with the donuts and the coffee in the morning?
All right. It goes back in the day, the only places that used to be open were like coffee shops and stuff. So the business owners would encourage the cops to be there because they didn't want to get robbed. So the cops would meet up late at night, have their free cup of coffee. Owners like, here you go, have a donut, and it became this whole thing. So like Dunkin' Donuts, we'd all congregate to grab a cup of coffee just because it was usually open at night. Now it might be Starbucks or it could be
Right. Now you've
Huawei or so
got
whatever it is, whatever. So
Wawa.
I Wawa, that's I couldn't remember. I was thinking of anyways, I never ate a donut in uniform because I was sold on the fact that a bagel was healthier, right? So I
Oh,
ate
wow.
ate tons of bagels. It's the same thing, in the end, my body's still processing it the same way, and there was all kinds of little things that were happening as a cop. You have rashes and stuff from wearing that body armor. You have, I was like constantly getting little things taken out, cysts taken out of my back, and just all kinds of aggravating symptoms that I had with that kind of lifestyle and my diet.
Hmm.
Rashes and just, things were just annoying, and over by changing the diet, obviously a lot of things improved from inside out, and that's just kind of how, I don't know how that donut thing they start putting in
That's
movies,
the thing.
and then people buy you a donut. I don't want a donut, man. I don't want your donut.
Right. That's hilarious. Okay. I I don't want people to get so frustrated that we didn't get closure on the LDL and the CAT scan thing. So,
Oh yeah.
and I need the closure. So tell me what
Okay,
happened.
so all right, we did all the testing. So now we're like, oh, let's work on detoxing. Right now he wanted to do another scan with contrast.
Hmm.
And I read some stuff about the metals in the dye, that they have and some of that. And I was just kind of scared of it at that time. I didn't want any more exposure to radiation, because I'd had multiple surgeries in my life, I knocked my teeth out when I was like 10, my front teeth. And it's been a nightmare my whole life. Root canals, I'd bite into a sandwich at school, my tooth would be looking back at me because the crown came out, so I was always in and out braces, always getting injections, all metals in those freaking injections. I mean, so no wonder I got poisoned. So you just start looking at all those little different things, and I'm sorry, I lost train of thought thinking about the where were we just
Yeah,
then?
like
I'm sorry.
what happened after you did the detox thing?
Oh
Like
yeah,
what
so the
happened? You had
detox
a
thing's happening, and a year goes by and I go to another event, and Dr. Ovadia's, hey, how you doing? I go, well, let's retest me. Let's see how I did,
hmm.
and so we did the blood work again. Um, same thing. My LDL is a little high, but there's nothing really to be concerned about, all my ratios, like my HDL was like, well, they're all around the same. It's like 88, 72, I'm sorry, it's 78 and 82 is my LDL and trigs, ratio. So I was always around 1.0 or point whatever. So I always felt good. My C peptides were good. So we go rescan again,
Okay.
and now it's 5,600. So now it's 5,000. I think I should be published. I think I should be in some medical journal now because I'm starting to enter this range of where I can't find anybody with higher CAC scores. There are some out there. I've heard 7,000. There's some 5,800s out there. I joined a Facebook group for high calcium scores. It's called the
Hmm.
High CAC Club. There's people in there. I know. There's a Facebook group for everything, right? So
Yep.
they got people in there flipping out about 250 scores. They're like, my score came back 250. My cardiologist is sending me for, a stress test, and he says I should be on Lipitor, and blah, blah, blah. You see this like fear mongering going on. I'm sitting there with a 5,600 score, like, dude, you don't even know. You're fine. Don't, let's look at some of the other numbers, your inflammation markers and some of that stuff, your insulin levels, and let's
Yeah.
see what's causing it. Because you
Yeah.
might be poisoning yourself with other factors that's not related to your LDL or some of your diet. So I'm on there as the carnivore crazy guy, that has this crazy high CAC score. And yeah, Dr. Sean Baker even talked about it, in a story. I'm like, I can't believe I'm like walking around with this crazy number. I mean, they're saying I'm going to die of a heart attack. That's the fear mongering for modern medicine, right?
Hmm.
But I don't run marathons. That's not my lifestyle. I'm more of a hiker, played short sports like spurts, basketball, football, that's was always my type of sport. And I don't know why the number's still increasing. I know my body's healing. I think what's happened is I started fasting longer, and I really
Mm.
think my body's tapping in through, autophagy into my deep cellular fat storages that go back to when I was a kid,
Hmm.
because I'm weighing the same weight as like eighth grade now. I haven't been this weight in 46 years.
Wow.
That's a long time. So I don't know. I don't know if there's something to that I'm tapping into stuff that's still exposing me, but at least it's piling up at the end of the heart, in my right coronary and not at my left. So
How about running? Have you trialed a bout of running?
like long distance. No, Dr. Chafee told me don't even think about start running any long distances,
No, no, not like marathon type. Why don't even think about running long distances?
I think he said it as a joke, like stick to sprinting and more of the
Right.
shorter
The problem
spurts.
that I find with sprinting is that that's great, and I do that, but you can't sprint every single day. The recovery is too much. And I think that just looking ancestrally speaking, and if you look at the hunter-gatherer ancestors, they had a lot of physical activity that was pretty intense for like pretty much most of the day.
Yeah,
And so it kind of goes into like the raising baseline dopamine content that I put out, that yes, the intensity is very important, but also there's the foundation. If I just focus on intensity, what is the fastest way to raise the intensity of my exercise? It would be just sprinting, but then you would have to take days off and recover. And so you can't really get 7, 8 miles a day if you're doing it in a
right.
that maximum effort the whole time. So it's like you need that foundation to be built while at the same time constantly getting faster and faster and faster. And so the fastest, like a sustained marathon runner, one of the fastest, like they can do 13 miles per hour for like 2 hours straight, right? So I'm not saying everybody should be at that level.
Right.
But like for me, I do close to 7 miles per hour for
Yeah.
like a couple miles, then I'll drop it to like 6.5 miles. I can do that, and so I get my miles in less than an hour, and it doesn't have to be every single day, but like that, there, like now I'm going to talk a little bit about addiction. Like when I talk about really eliminating food addiction and cravings for the addiction, like that's the level that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a
Yeah.
Pilates class, and I'm thinking of Pilates because it's so common. I get so many clients that think that Pilates is going to help, and it's like the level of intensity that I'm talking about compared to people's expectations of what it takes. There's such a mismatch.
Yeah, I met Dr. Ben at and started doing resistance training, 15 minutes of fitness. Dr. Ben, I mess up his name every time. It's like Ben Venucci or something like that. But I met him and he was talking about resistance training. And then when I went to school for my sports nutrition license and I got to the personal training, I learned a lot about resistance training. And
Yeah.
I get my heart rate blasting just on lifting weights, slow is fast. I may do 3 reps
Okay.
over 90 seconds, because I'm doing slow and steady, and I
Mm.
realized doing a lot of this how weak my core was,
Mm.
deep on my core, like my abs and my back muscles and my hip muscles. And, because carrying around that weight made my legs and, I was strong,
Yeah.
but deep around my gut and deep, so I can do handstands now. I'm doing a lot more calisthenics, and that type of keeping the body moving every day, 15,000 steps, because we're just, when you're in a campground and you're living in an RV, you can't just run around your house. So you're outdoors. Let's
Mm,
take a walk. You're more active, and
yeah.
so yeah, my lifting and all that's totally changed on the road. Obviously I'm a member of certain gyms and every town there's a gym nearby. I love going to gyms. It's just, it's the way I can get away and escape. I like working out here too, but I get distracted with nature. I just sit there, how am I going to work out intensely looking at this? You know, I'm going to just want to chill and, have a glass of sparkling water. So,
That's funny. Yeah, that's like when I texted you earlier. I was like, just 5 minutes, I'm finishing up with my client. And you're like, hey, chill, I'm over here enjoying the view, taking it easy. I was like,
yeah.
living the life. I love it. We're thinking of doing something like that, just because when you work online, you can go for a month here, a month there.
You know
There's,
what's cool is you can rent one. There's a place called RV Share, and you can call them or whatever, you reserve it, and they'll take it to the campground that you want to stay at, deliver it, hook it up. You show up, and they give you the keys, and they teach you how the keys like to get in, not to drive it.
oh,
And you don't have to touch it. You don't have to tow it, drive it, or anything. So you can get a practice run. That's how we got into it because my wife started me off with, she's like, we should downsize. I'm like, okay, how do you want to do that? Right. And it's like, what about tiny house. I'm like, tiny house. I'm like 230 pounds. I'm imagining me knocking the whole thing in, and it being cheap or whatever. And we went down this path of storage, tankers, shipping containers in the woods. I'm like, this girl's crazy. And then it was tree houses. I think I could live in a big tree. I'm like, this, oh my goodness. So I finally gave in. Oh, let's try this RV thing. And I don't know if you know, but in 2019, I had done a 23andMe, a DNA test back in 2016. And that's 2019. I got an email because another guy had done a DNA test, and it turns out we matched up as half brothers. So I get an
that's why
email,
my hubby refuses to do that. It's like, what if I have a kid somewhere? I don't want to know.
dude, be careful. All right, so I did the test 3 years later, not thinking much. I get an email that says, "Hey, my name is Dave. I don't know anything about my birth family because I was adopted, and now I'm looking into it, and you came up, and it says you're my half brother." And the,
Wow.
the wildest thing was he not only was he my half brother, he was a cop and he lived in Orlando, 2 hours away from me. So all of a sudden it became this crazy scene. So we told our departments after we verified it, because I thought it was being scammed, and then we FaceTimed each other. I'm looking at this guy, looks more like my dad than anybody else. Because my dad's been married 5 times. There's a whole bunch of trauma there. Don't get me started. But anyways, the other siblings and he's the one that looks like my dad the most, and he was the older brother. So here I am looking at a 50-year-old guy, and I'm 49, about to retire. And I'm looking at his hands and his facial features, and it's like a clone just was dropped out of the sky. It was wild. So
Wow.
we tell our police department, hey, I found a brother's a cop in Orlando. And it went crazy. Went all over social media. Fox and Friends were interviewed on. We got our nice suit, our, like class A's on, getting interviewed. And Lester Holt did a story at NBC Nightly News. We auditioned for The Amazing Race. We got casting calls for December 12th. We're going to LA, baby. I'm like, Dave, this is crazy. I retired. We're going to LA to do a show. Who thought it, right? So
Wow.
they pushed us back to the next season because they already had 10. I guess we were on the 12, 10 of 12 groups. So they pushed us back till February of 2020. Well, then that little COVID thing showed up and we never got the call back again. So we never
Oh,
got to take our trip out to LA. Not that we wanted to, it was just a running joke between us. Like I find a brother, now we're going to LA. This is crazy.
right.
So yeah, a lot of good things happened. But one of the things he had done was camp for 10 years, RV camped. He'd been doing it. So he told me about renting a camper, and then we rented a camper next to my big brother and learned how to
Wow.
camp at 50 years old. Here I am camping with my big bro. It's freaking wild, you know.
What an insane story.
Oh, he's got a crazy side. He ended up tracking down his birth mom, which was I had to tell my dad he's got a 50-year-old kid. I mean, these are all conversations that people were like, "Oh, you found a brother, cool." No, I had to tell my dad, "Hey, where were you in the fall of 1967?" He's like, oh, I was in the Air Force. I go, yeah, in 68. What happened in 67? Where were you? I'm like a cop interviewing him.
Right.
He's like, well, I worked at a store called Woolworths. I go, yeah. Was there a girl there? And he's like, yeah. And he said he was hooking up with a girl back then. Turns out to be Dave's mom. And she was pregnant. And she put Dave up for adoption. And he was adopted by a Navy pilot. And he grew up in San Diego on the beaches of San Diego and ended up in Florida, became a cop, and found me and my clan of,
Wow.
craziness. So yeah, he got me into camping. It was this awesome moment. I'm sorry.
Your mom,
Oh yeah, we didn't get to my mom.
does she know?
Well, that's not her son.
Okay. Oh, okay. But your dad was
All
married
right,
three
work with.
times.
Come on,
Right,
come
right,
on.
right. It
Follow
wasn't
it,
like,
follow it. It
okay,
was
your dad,
another woman. Yeah.
right, right, right. So it wasn't like he was married to your mom and he had a little
You
thing
were
on
like,
the side, and then your mom, you had to tell your mom
so
later
what
on.
happened was my dad had met Dave's mom before he was dating my mom.
Gotcha.
So he had
Okay.
knocked her up. He joins the Air Force, comes back into town with this, he's looking all sharp, and he knew my mom back in high school, and they started dating. And so my mom actually had an art scholarship to Florida State. She was a hippie, 1968, grew up in Miami. She's Cuban, so she was
Right.
loving to get out of there and get up there. And then my dad knocked her up. They got married, and then she became a homicide sergeant. That's how bad he messed her up. So he so my mom ended up being a cop for 30 years in Miami. She actually was featured in the show Griselda. Her character is June Hawkins.
Okay.
And it was pretty wild that the lead character that's catching Sofia Vergara, who's playing,
Yeah.
Griselda Blanco. And we got to talk to Juliana Martinez. She's from Hialeah. She's the actress that played my mom. She would call us and talk to us about the scripts, and it was very interactive process, and
The one that was Sofia Vergara, that's the latest one. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So Detective June Hawkins that's my mom. And my stepfather's actually in it. He's Detective Al Singleton, and he's the guy with the gold stapler that they had at the end when she's hanging out all the time and she's like talking to another cop. Well, that's him. And they ended up getting married like 10 years later. So there's a whole
Okay.
love story in there. It's crazy.
Wow. Okay, now I have to watch it because I've watched the movie, but I haven't watched like the series with I know that Sofia Vergara has been having it in production development for a while, and I guess now it's live on Netflix. Is
Yeah,
it on
it
Netflix?
it, it came out last January, a year ago,
Okay.
and it was on that. Yeah, I'm sure if you just type it in, you'll see it. Six-part series. It is our Narcos. It's done by the writers of Narcos, so it is going to be some violence. Your husband will probably like it, and
Oh, he love it.
there's
Yeah.
some, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. You do see a little Eric, a little Keto 50 in it in one scene. She refers to me a lot, Eric, blah blah blah. But there's one scene where she's taking me to baseball practice and it's down there in it looks like it's down there in Kendall somewhere because the sign looks the same, even though it was all filming was in LA. But it was pretty cool, and her and I have a little banter in the car. And here I am,
Wow.
this little 12-year-old Eric in the scene.
So your mom, the portrayal of your mom is very like it's at length and the whole it's
Oh
not
yeah, she's like, and now Juliana, who played my mom, is now on. I think she's on CSI or one of those crime scene. Like she might have been just stereotyped or typecasted as that role because she nailed it. And my mom, man, my mom needs a book. She's got so much crazy stuff. When I sit around, I'm like, man, I wasn't even a drop of a bucket of a cop that she was.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
very interesting talks around our Thanksgiving table when you have two homicide sergeants, and you're like, so what was the craziest call you ever seen? And it's like, all right, kids, you got to leave the room.
That's amazing. I love it. Okay. Wow. I have
Sorry, we went down Hollywood fame there for a second. It's just been some craziness that's happened, and
yeah.
that's why I'm using it to empower our family and the people we meet and really trying to get through to guys and I can get access to the police culture and the fire department guys. I've been there, I've lived it. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what we're trying to do now. Really get in there, get to more of these conferences and bring kind of those carnivore, keto, this community that we have. I want to bring that into my guys because I know it'll help the
Yeah.
long term and especially mentally. And it'll help the relationships and it'll help the way they communicate. And one of the things I've had is taking the edge off of my PTSD with this
Mhm.
kind of eating is I've really tried to slow things down and not be so aggravated, be so hangry all the time because now I'm eating the proper human diet.
Yeah.
So I'm not, going through these crazy emotional situations, but I still feel it. Everyone's got trauma, You know, I mean, you don't have to be a cop or a first responder, whether it was a car accident, whether it was something that happened in your family. You
Mm.
know, how many people have seen a dead body in their life, discovered a dead body? A lot more people have seen that and never dealt with it. You know, it's not a
Yeah.
natural thing to happen, you know. So everyone has their trauma, whether they're eating to get away from it, what they're hiding from it, you know. So what we try to do is get the guys at least to talk about it, you know, and let them know they're not alone, that we've all been through what, you know, cops see that different things than average people see, you know, and we've all been there. So what we've done with the Cops and Campers initiative is get the guys out there to the campfire, get them talking. Dr. Kiltz is coming to my New York event again. He came last year to talk to the troops and really tell them about, you know, beef, butter, salt, water, you know, kind of like the Lion's diet. And I really encourage guys to do that. If you're on shift work, learn how to fast. If you're not on, you know, during your, you know, you got to work out your schedule, but really learn how to fast on duty because your perception, your awareness, you're going to be like a cat on the hunt and you're going to be more focused and hopefully you're more level headed and you won't beat a guy down that doesn't deserve it. You know, don't show any, you know, we get in trouble for traffic and usually stress related stuff, which is alcohol related or drug related, or stealing money for finances and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not saying a diet's going to cure you, but it's definitely going to help you make better decisions about certain things
Yeah.
you get into, you know. So,
Yeah, especially when it comes with addictions, like such a stressful job. And what is the biggest trigger for all kinds of addictions? Alcohol, all kinds of drugs, nicotine, food. Food is probably the most prevalent because it's not even recognized as an addiction for the most part. Just being on a carnivore diet or in a state of ketosis at the very least, um, in a lot of cases, will abruptly, without any other intervention, just being in sustained ketosis is gonna cure the addiction. It removes the cravings for alcohol. It removes the cravings for food. Whatever it is, the substance that that person has learned works for when they're stressed out. It removes the urges. For anxiety, there was a paper that was published in 2024. It's just amazing. It's a case a series of three different patients that were taken into that clinic. The intervention was sustained ketosis. So they wanted to make sure they had a blood ketone levels of zero point 0.8 millimolar. So usually 0.5 millimolar per liter, that indicates you're officially in ketosis. 0.3 is a mild. There's debate, are you in ketosis or not? So 0.3 is mild. 0.5, everybody agrees you're officially in ketosis. So in the case report of those three people, amazing results. They had them be at zero point 0.8. So they had them be at zero point 0.8 millimolar per liter sustained. At the 2 week mark, 2 to 4 week mark, I think no, 2 week mark for all of them, anxiety cured, like completely cured. Depression started getting better, but at the 2 month mark is when depression completely went away. And they were just looking at it from a depression and anxiety point of view because those were people that could not hold a job because of severe mental health from a very young age. They've taken all the drugs and to the point where they're no longer functional. So they didn't even address the binge eating or the food addiction component of it, even though all of them also had that complete remission of binge eating. So they weren't being told to you probably have a food addiction issue and let's try to change. Like, no, the only intervention was stay in ketosis, 0.8 millimolar sustained, right? And there was remission of the binge eating and that food addiction tendency by itself. It resolved itself in all of the cases, which I found was insane. So
yeah,
yeah.
I, one of my battles was alcohol because
Mhm.
it's, you know, looking back, man, I hadn't been alcohol free since I was under 18. You know, the minute I got to college, you know, every weekend, you know, and then once I got into police work, you know, obviously in your 20s, you're being a socialite a little bit. You're going out trying to figure out who you are and what you're doing in life. And at least I was. And, you know, that the habits weren't too good then either, you know, and then you get onto a job that's just stressful and what's, you know, across the board in our profession, alcohol is accepted and we get into trouble with it. We crash, you know, we hurt ourselves, we hurt others. And it's not a very effective way to decompress long term. Now, I will say I drank the whole time I lost weight. I lost 80 pounds. I was still drinking every day. I was having a glass of vodka, something to take the edge off. Because I
Mm.
had to, I didn't know what was going on with me a lot of ways. Like, why was I agitated? Why was I kind of always feeling like, it's kind of the grind of life and grind of the job. So I had to really work hard on what could I do. Guys can't just take sleeping pills. Some guys are on medications they don't tell their departments. So, I know my own struggles to quit alcohol was more out of just habit and what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
So I started exploring different things. My wife tries to get me to meditate, and all these different things. But, I did discover CBD, not discover it, but I do use CBD oils and stuff like that. And if I get to Florida, there is some parties now and then that I have fun with, but I don't drink. I really took a serious approach to looking at what it's doing to my body, the heart disease, and some of the other things. It wasn't doing any good really for me. And it's been great since I stopped. My wife says I'm a lot nicer. And, when you think about drinking, I'm 55, right? So I've been drinking since I was 18, pretty off and on. That's a long time throughout life to go drinking consistently. I mean, even if I caught the flu, I'd probably have a couple of beers, just
Mhm.
take the
Yeah.
edge off. So
Yeah.
I think that's also part of the high calcium score is all that my body is purging and just getting rid of so much crap. And it's doing it in stages. And, you tend to gain weight one way and you reverse it to lose the weight, So now it's at my love handles that I had when I was a little kid, and it works to some of the other areas where I have loose skin because you can't lose 80 pounds and expect to just be, I'm going to look like freaking life like Jake, or some shit like that, And so, yeah, it's been. Man, it's amazing. I'm so mad that the system did this to us and everybody, knowing that the way we're eating and what they're doing, they knew it. They profited from us. They made us sick and stupid. And I get so mad. I want to be part of, if Robert Ketty ever hears me and he wants a task force to take down all these pharma guys and all these freaking food representatives, the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, all those crooked fronts need to be like RICO laws, need to take these guys down like they did with the mob, because that's all it is, organized crime, and it's insane that we got kids that are fat and sick at freaking 8 and 9 years old, and it's such a sad story. And the parents think they're doing the right thing, or they're so mentally, just numb from their own diets, and the medications they're on. It's just sad. And we see it across the country where we go, just fat kids, sick kids, and
You know,
it's
it's
really a shame.
it is yeah, it is like the like legal drug dealing right now. It's like that's the loophole. The world isn't alert enough that how much of a drug it is. That's probably far more powerful than all the other illegal drugs, even more than cocaine, even more than heroin, even they're definitely like just at least in the rat studies, it's very clear that sugar is a harder drug than heroin and cocaine. And in humans, I mean, just look around, look at people who are in recovery from hard drugs compared to when they try to quit the food. They can't. It's. I mean, I don't ever want to say you can, but it's just like
It's
the
hard.
the rate. Yes, the rate of success is so abysmal.
I
It's like
I can taste every fast food out there. Like if somebody says, "Can you taste a Whopper with cheese?" Yep, I can taste it right now in my mouth. Double, all that stuff. I've had so much of it in my life, and as a cop, you ate like that because you need to grab a meal. I wish I knew about fasting. I would have saved
well,
so much money if I'm buying that
right?
junk.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It was
carnivore, I mean, oh, it would have been great for me.
Wouldn't that? Me too. I was given when you were telling me about the 3 years of breastfeeding, which was amazing. I only got like 4 months, of which 1 month of those I was on condensed milk, sweetened.
Oof. There it
My
is. There's the start of it.
That's right. My mom had to leave me with my aunt and my grandma in the mountains in Lebanon. Something with the paperwork, they couldn't take me, whatever. Talk about trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so she didn't find out that, see, I guess I stopped. I guess I was like, wait, I was throwing a fit from a very young age. Like, where's my breast milk? So I wouldn't take the formula for a while. And so they discovered that, hey, if you give her condensed milk, she'll have it. Give her the drug. So for a whole month straight until my mom found out and lost it. It's like, how can you give her that with? So yeah, imagine the age of onset, giving a hard drug to a developing brain. And just look at around like babies, they're given highly addictive, ultra processed foods. And it's not just like the sugar is addictive, but then when you combine it in different ways with natural flavors, you increase the addictive potential exponentially. And so the food companies know that this is why they will fight, tooth and nail to protect their right to be able, their right, whatever, to be
One of
able
my
to
guilt
use those foods. Yeah.
I was gonna say one of my guilty pleasures is like dark chocolate, right? I did
Mm.
that. Chocolate was my thing as a kid. I didn't do like Red Hots. I didn't do Nerd Candy. I liked the chocolate, milk chocolate. That was my thing. And to this day, it is still a very powerful force. It's there. But what I do is the dark chocolate. She'll get some whatever, like pumpkin seed mix or something, and if I mix that chocolate with the salt, that little combo,
Oh yeah.
man, I can't stop eating that thing, man. And I know it, but I can really pay attention to it. I'm like, yeah, they know what they're doing, man.
Worse.
That's yeah,
Those
it
are the
works great.
five. Yeah, it's like starch is not starch by itself, like the carbs, but I'm gonna say starch, but it's really more the combination, right? Because if you get a Ritz cracker without fat and without salt, you're not gonna get addicted to it. But it's like when you combine it, right? So the
Yeah.
addictive potential is in starch, sweet stuff, whether it's sugar or artificial sweeteners, caffeine, salt, and fat. And then I would add dairy, also like the casein activates the opioid receptors in the brain. And then I would add natural flavors. This is the one thing that like a lot more people have wisened up to sugar, but not
Yeah.
enough people understand when you dump in the natural flavors, which is a whole other world, you
They
know?
just dump the sugar in there. That's all
Yeah.
they do.
And then
I
you
mean,
combine them. Imagine a chocolate donut, right? A salted caramel chocolate donut.
ooh, I can't imagine
Imagine how
chocolate
many of
donut.
those elements it's got, all of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
yeah,
But yeah, the food's been I broke up with food. That's what I had to do. I had to break up with it. I couldn't
you
have
have
this love
to.
affair. I mean, and now I can like love a steak or something. Like I'm thinking about dinner tonight. I got a was a poor man's ribeye. It's a rump roast. I'm just gonna slice up and just cook it that way. I might throw some onions in it or something. I still dabble in that life, but
Hmm.
yeah,
I
I
think
love
it's
it. It's
worth a
simple.
shot not to dabble for 30 to 90 days. I think every person should owe it to themselves to at least 30
Yeah.
to 90 days because the brain fog, the anxiety that comes from even small amounts of the toxins, and especially things like onions. I mean, there's a reason you cry when
Yeah.
you're
I know
slicing
that should be
onions,
right. I'm
right? It's
crying
like,
with onions and farting with broccoli. This is
right,
telling me something.
take a hint. So especially when especially when you feel like, if I ask you, do you feel you can optimize your mental health more? If your answer is, if you think about it, you're like, maybe yes, like there's your clue right there. It's worth
Yeah.
a shot, you know, just for 30 to 90 days. Because imagine if all of a sudden you open up your brain power and mental health and optimize anxiety, no more anxiety at all, no anxiety, no PTSD, no depression at all, by let's say 50% or 100%. That's a shot worth fighting for. But you gotta, because we all recognize that, but I feel like having like that big goal, I always talk about increase your pull forces, like set a really big goal, something that is going to require you to extract every last bit of potential from you, because that's what's going to drive you to do that. Just experiment, because it might not do anything, but there's a chance that it might. But yeah, I understand the sacrifice.
Yeah. I'm thinking about doing a 72-hour fast. I haven't done one of those yet. Just because of
Hmm.
lifestyle and my own workout routines and stuff I had, I just was like, I can't do 3 days. My kids, I
Yeah.
couldn't chance it if we are traveling, driving an RV. I didn't want to be at my third day, of a fast or something and be dozing off or something. I guess I put like, I know, yeah, you don't want to doze off driving an RV.
No. Yeah.
So yeah, but that's one of the things I'm looking at. I think we're going to stay in Alabama a year and use it as like a landing spot to go to Florida, to go, to New York, to kind of spread the word through Texas and some of the places we're going.
Nice.
Because Alabama, we were shocked. We had no idea. You flee a hurricane and you find paradise. So it's pretty,
You're liking it.
yeah. So, a lot of grass-fed farms around. I mean, not a lot, but you can find them. They're more than like what you would find in Florida, unless you're in Ocala, you know. I actually was looking at a job over there in Ocala. It's called Jungle Boys, but we won't get into that.
Jungle Boys.
It's a cannabis company. I was looking at, I know the cop with cannabis, but I was looking at inventory, like a security on the back end thing. So
Gotcha,
that
gotcha.
was
Yeah,
one of
I
my
mean,
jobs.
the whole cannabis thing is like it's ridiculous that alcohol is legalized and weed is not. I understand addiction, and I am very like hardcore when it comes to addiction, but I also understand that some people can handle recreational drugs without any problem. I don't ever want to make anything like illegal for anybody.
Right.
Anybody could ever go to prison for weed. Like, give me a break. We're in
Yeah,
2025.
I never had any domestics where they were fighting over the bong or the pizza. It was always fighting over the
E-
bottle or the crack pipe, or some
Exactly.
other shit. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly. It just chills, it mellows everybody out. Somebody wants to, like just this notion that it's still illegal blows my mind. Like I cannot wrap my head around. I mean, United States, like the superpower. We're supposed to be smart here, right? It's just anyway, whatever.
Well, the psychedelics, there's all kinds of therapies out there that can help cops or a lot of people with trauma that they're just preventing, because of the money that's behind the other side of it. And
Exactly. And
don't
I
worry, you're
mean,
going down. We're gonna RICO your asses.
right? Anyway. So I'm going to touch bases with you later on and see, keep an eye on the CAC score and see what's going on. And if you have any new insights in your Facebook group and everything that people are probably sharing there. And
Yeah, I got to get you and my wife together. I think you two are a lot alike, and you'd probably hit it off. And
I was
you know,
gonna
obvi
say, I love your wife. Like,
oh
all the
my gosh,
stuff.
she's awesome, and she speaks a couple languages, so she's a lot smarter than I am, of course. But I was sitting, I'm like, man, I could see you two hitting it off, and we're passing through Florida. I think we're going down to Benazati's book signing event in Miami that's coming up.
Really?
Uh,
When is that?
I think it's the 7th. I think it's May 7th. I heard something about it online. I'm still looking into it, but I didn't know I
Wow.
was going to be down there until the last couple of weeks. We just found out we might take a trip down there. So
I love how you like go everywhere now because you're so mobile. It's like events
it's
all over.
it's great. We're like, hey, you want to go to Austin? I took my kid there, and he met this parkour team that he'd been following on YouTube, and was like, Dad, this is the greatest trip ever. And one of the guys mentioned starting a YouTube channel for him. So my son does as well as parkouring and jumping around. He does like stop motion, which is like the slow videos of characters that you
I
take
watched a
several
movie,
hours.
a horror movie that hubby was
You
watching.
watch.
It was centered around the stop motion artist.
So
Yeah.
y- so yeah, he's a little carnivore kid, and he started this little channel, and it's doing it's a little thing. It's his little side project. He's not on there interacting. It's just his work. And
Love
he calls it stop action with a K in action, because that's what he's all about. And I'm like, hey, I'm able to empower my guys and my boys, and trying to use it as a tool, because social media is something very powerful. It's not going away. So we're trying to at least be there as a partner in it, because he's all his friends have it. Eventually, that's where they're going with some form of it,
Yeah.
AI, and you just can't hide from it. So he's gonna learn how to shoot. He's gonna learn how to garden and raise cattle. He's also going to be an online sensation with videos and stuff like that, right? So, and health and
Yeah.
nutrition.
Yeah, I feel like when people completely eliminate social media from their kids, it's like, what kind of world do you think your kids are going to grow up in? Like, they should have experience dealing with that. And now they're installing better safety measures and stuff for to kind of moderate, like, because I understand the bullying and stuff, but I feel like it's better with exposure therapy and learning how to deal with that from a young age. And it's like you're growing a business. Imagine if we had the option to invest in our business and start a YouTube channel when we were 7 or 8. By the time you're 20, you've made it. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
and it's like I was saying, his friends that he's meeting in this way of traveling, we're not in the same neighborhood. So it's always like, hey, Dad, can you get Johnny's dad's number? So now I'm meeting Johnny's dad's, and hey, we'll keep in touch. And when they're 8, you probably won't see this guy again. But when they start getting older, they're like, I really like that kid. now able to say, all right, follow him on his YouTube channel. You can keep track, and and now he's got his little friends that he's only 13, so he's got friends that he's had for 5 years, which I got one friend left over from 15, years old. Everyone else has jumped on the train or gotten off, and I'm always getting new passengers along the way, but
Yeah.
he's going to have these hardcore little kids for life, and it's
Yeah.
interesting the way to grow up like that, to have
Yeah.
all your friends, that you grew up with around, and visible and to interact with them and then meet their friends. And what a different way of growing up.
It is. Yeah, the world is, I mean, the rate at which the world is changing is insane. But I'm not complaining. I love progress. I love things that move fast, especially when it comes to AI and aging, curing aging. I was the interview. I'm gonna send you the interview that I was telling you about earlier. It's just a 30-minute update on like where we're at with the state of curing aging, and just you see like because there are 7 to 8 major hallmarks of aging. Some papers say it's 13. They just subdivide certain causes of aging further. But anyway, um, that is such a great interview with Dr. Aubrey Gray, where they look at, okay, how much percentage improvement we've done in the last was it in the last 20 years or in the last 30 years? Like not that long ago. And you'll see maybe like in the 1900s to now, how much improvement have we done in anti-aging progress? And you'll see like so many of those hallmarks of aging or the causes of aging, you've got 70% improvement in just a few decades. 60% improvement, 40%. The thing that's the toughest is like the mitochondria stuff, which I think if you dump in the carnivore crowd into it, that can really help with that one cause of aging, and then everything else we can get the treatments for. So yeah, like and that was just looking at where we've done what we've done without AI. Now imagine throw in AI that's constantly going to get faster and smarter, and it gets really
Yeah.
exciting real fast. So anyway,
I had Chat GPT the other day. It called me bro. I'm like, man, I love
really,
that. I love this thing. She's like, it's gonna try to replace me. It's gonna be like, does your wife not support you? I'm like, yeah, she's always dropping the ball on projects.
it's
So
yeah,
she talks to it, she'll jump in there and try and ask, and it comes back with like an answer it doesn't match. And I'm like, see, you just don't know how to talk to it.
mm,
But yeah, AI is definitely gonna be a huge factor. And if you're not using it, you better jump on because and it saved me some time on simple things. Just like I forget how to sometimes even write a quick little paragraph or something and get all my words in there, and it'll just spit it out. I'm like, that's awesome. I used to be able to think like that.
I used to be. I love it. Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
Eric, thank you
All
so
right.
much. I had a blast. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Where next? What are you working towards? What are you excited about?
What do we got going on? I'm going to let's see, I'm going to UMA for the Healing Humanity event this Sunday. There's a gathering. I just happen to be a couple hours away. But yeah, we're doing meat stock. We're going to do the Hack Your Health down there in Tampa, Cops and Campers in New York with Dr. Kiltz's carnivore tribe. And, you know, but yeah, follow us with obviously Keto 50, and anything Cops and Campers. And also I've partnered up with Keto Keep, which is part of the Rivero brand of people, hopefully. Um, I know there are a bunch of people that are associated with Rivero starting it. Keto Keep, it's a group of us all just coming together and helping each other out. And, that's where I'll be. And hopefully still making the tours, talking to awesome people like you and spreading the word and trying to save some lives and change perspectives, not only on law enforcement, but on some of the dogma that's been presented with keto and high LDL and high mass, you know, what was I? I was lean mass hyper responders, and
Hmm.
that's why I found myself where, here I am lean and I got this crazy high cholesterol and it's freaking people out. But, you just got to do your research and understand that you're okay. Your body knows how to heal itself if you allow it to do what it's supposed to do, and you got to give it the tools, and that's the nutrition, that's the minerals and vitamins. Sometimes you need help. Sometimes
Hmm.
you might need a naturopath or someone to come in and help you with exactly, like women have thyroid issues more than men's, so maybe you would need more of that concentration in your therapy. And with video health now, you can reach out to all these doctors you see, all these practitioners, everybody. You can get them and talk personal with them and have them be your doctors now. You don't have to drive to Seattle to see somebody, so it's fantastic the opportunities that they got out there. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Awesome. And I will make sure that I link all of your social media links in the description box below. That way people can click very easily and connect with you and follow along your journey. And I'm sure we're going to stay in touch. I had a
Yeah.
blast. We dove into so many things, especially the Miami history.
Oh, the
And
Miami history is awesome, man. Yeah. So,
I'm going to have to watch Griselda now for sure. I'll be
yeah. If you,
texting you. It's like, remind me again. Yeah.
Yeah, the Grizz, and also Deeper Dive is the Cocaine Cowboys documentary. It's all about Miami and the drug war. That's more my stepfather is more of the star in that one, and that's an older documentary by a couple of the guys down there in Miami. So it's really cool, man. A lot of history down there, a lot of money, a lot of dead bodies.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sorry to laugh at that. So it's that kind of sinister. Ha ha ha.
No, that's fine. My hubby, he grew up in like the 70s and the 80s in Miami. Just
Oh,
like,
so we'll probably get
oh,
along. I'd like to meet this
oh,
guy one day. We're passing through Florida. Maybe we'll see one of
yeah,
these times. So,
totally. We have to. Yeah, everything you know about that life, like he grew up there with minimal supervision. His mom was working two jobs, and him and his brother was like, yeah, the stories he has will blow your mind,
well,
yeah.
there's a, I wonder if he knows about, and down in Southridge, which is down near Homestead and the Perrine area, all of us kids were called Ridge Rats. And we were like these tough skateboard kids that got into trouble. We didn't come from, we were like latchkey kids, a lot of us. Our parents are either working, to support that. Both parents have to work to provide for this nice house. So we're all running around these neighborhoods and getting, fighting. It was like our own
Yeah,
little, and yeah, it's called Ridge Rats. That's what we always called ourselves. It's pretty
I've heard
funny.
of. Yeah, well, then you two are pretty much the same because it was
Yeah.
like that, like on the streets, no supervision on the streets, and like with really in neighborhoods because they couldn't afford like really expensive places to grow up in. So it was exposed to things they shouldn't have been exposed to from a very young age.
Construction sites. We were doing all kinds of craziness that no, we could play at our school without the school being open. We used to be able to just, I mean, now
Wow.
it's like trespass and get out of here. It's like a prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the good old days, man. It was something about those times. You were in between those 70s and or 60s, and right before the 80s where it got really wacky and fluorescent. So
Before the helicopter parents, yeah, started
exactly.
also, yeah.
So
No, I get it, but it toughens you up because I'm sure you can see like now with like the kids right now versus your personality and your character, you can see how much more accommodating we've become to everybody. I'm not saying that one is right or wrong because I know like at any point in time, both of you and my husband could have been dead. Like is he's just in awe every day that he's he made it, you
yeah.
know? Like and the older you get, the more you realize how many dangers there were around when you had no supervision, right? And so right now is just we have made it so comfortable in every way, shape, or form for our kids and for ourselves too, with the whole like safe rooms, and there's a name for every emotion, there's a name for every form of discomfort, and how much of that is just called life and how much of that is a real condition that we have to protect from. I don't know.
Yeah,
We
it's
can
a hard
manage.
balance. It's a hard balance how hard you want to make it for your kids and not, like it's about opportunities and yeah, I have to be hard on them, but they definitely don't have it as hard as I do. I mean, but I know that. And they're also growing up at a different time. They're not me. They have two parents that are
Yeah.
together. I mean, I never saw my parents together unless
Wow.
they're,
Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't know that life. So I have to remember that. They're not me. They're not growing up as a single my mom's a single cop working and I'm surviving out here trying to fight my way to the top.
Mm.
It's a different way of approaching parenthood and interaction and how tough do you make it for them? So uncomfortable is okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta be a little uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but
Or
it's
just
hard.
teaching them that discomfort is a requirement for like waking. I guess working out is probably the biggest thing. Like when
Yeah.
kids come from an athletic background, they understand that to progress in life or in anything, there's a price you gotta pay. And let me tell you, like people, like the clients that I work with, because I work with so much with addiction and raising baseline dopamine and stuff like that. So how do you raise baseline dopamine? You do uncomfortable things. The
Right.
harder you can run, and the faster you can run, and the more weights you can lift, the higher your baseline dopamine, which means the happier you are, the more dopamine, serotonin, all this stuff, which means less urges and cravings. And so the clients that struggle with me the most are the ones that don't come from that. They've never had a history of working out. They're in shock like the first time they understand what a real workout is. And even with that, I'm like, you're a few months away from getting to that tipping point. And they're
Right.
already in shock and we haven't even started yet. And so it's just so much easier if they understand, if they grow up understanding and feeling comfortable with discomfort. This was something that Arnold Schwarzenegger's dad, he would be like, the kids couldn't eat before they would go through a workout, like a boot camp workout, doing push-ups and stuff. Like you wake up, you do that, and then your reward, you have to earn your breakfast. And so
Hmm.
imagine starting from a very young age with that. And of course, good genes as well with Schwarzenegger's case. But I think that that's also a very important element. It's normal to not only normal, you should have anxiety if you didn't get uncomfortable on a certain day because that means you did not progress that day. You mean no progress.
Right. No, that's
Am I
right on.
lecturing a lot? Sorry.
No, I actually felt like I was in class again. I thought I should take some notes. Like, is this going to be on the test?
I can't. I go off on these reds. I was
You
like,
went all
woo.
professor on me. No, it was good.
It's just like it's something that I repeat a lot because it's at the
Yeah.
core of addiction, at the core of what I do. But you know, I just it's easy to talk when you don't have children. It's so easy. It's like just do this or like to just give advice. But I know that it's like you might be on board with anything and you might believe in something, but to be able to even recommend it to somebody else, not let alone your kids, it's a whole other thing, you know?
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's pretty cool. My kids are actually back there somewhere. They're either fishing or they're shooting their bow and arrows right now.
living life.
And
That's
it's what
awesome.
is it, a Wednesday? So, or Tuesday? I don't even know what day it is. What day is it? No, it's Tuesday. I'm just
That
kidding.
is so cool. It's Tuesday. That is so cool to grow up like that,
Oh,
not
they don't know. I mean, they're gonna later on, they're gonna be like, "Man, Dad, you were the best." I'm like, I know.
it really is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I go
I'm
back to
living
my
it with
kids.
them though. I mean, that's one of the things, by retiring and walking away from that old life of having a house and a big boat and the jet skis that I'm working myself to death for.
Yeah.
I had to really say, what do I really need to live? I need to keep life simple. And this is what became my paradise, the outdoors and traveling around and meet different people. It just became addicting. And that's my new passion. It's pretty awesome.
I love it. I love it. Okay.
All
I'm
right.
gonna ask you about all this stuff later on when we actually go on this RV lifestyle, which I think we probably might. But to keep it short, I don't think we managed to keep it short. I can't. Oh, wow. Okay.
No, no.
Lots of
Two
time has
parts. It's a two-part episode. No,
This should
kidding.
probably a two-part, maybe. Thank you so much, Eric,
Thank you.
again. And thank you, everybody. If you're still
If you're
here,
still here, thanks.
wow, I'm impressed, right? Thank you. I will make sure I link Eric's socials in the description box below. If you like this kind of content, if maybe you enjoy longer form content, let us know in the comment section below. Also, make sure you give this YouTube video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.